Sierra Leone's urban population is rapidly growing, with over 40% of the country's population now living in urban areas. Freetown, as Sierra Leone's capital, accounts for 15% of the country's population, but less than 0.1% of the total landmass. The pressure of rapid urbanization, coupled with a lack of development control and affordable housing, is taking an increasingly heavy toll on the forest expanse in and around Freetown. The fringes of the city are rapidly pushing into the mountains, leading to a tree cover loss of 12% or 555 hectares per annum between 2011 and 2018, increasing water shortages, loss of biodiversity, and an increased exposure to disasters. The Freetown City Council partnered with the World Bank and the government of Sierra Leone under the Resilient Urban Sierra Leone project to fund and address some of the city's unique challenges through implementation of our hashtag Freetown the Tree Town campaign to plant and grow 1 million trees in the Freetown and Western Eyre Peninsulas over the period 2020 to 2022. Through the Resilient Urban Sierra Leone project, the Freetown the Tree Town campaign has established an intricate tree seedling purchasing, distribution, planting, and growing system, which has involved community engagement through community-based organizations and utilized open source online services, geospatial tagging through a tree tracker app, and third-party verification systems to ensure complete transparency during project execution. In addition, the campaign has contributed to the government's efforts to alleviate short-term economic and poverty impacts of COVID-19, as it has created short-term jobs, especially for youth and women. 553 jobs were created in the 48 reforested areas in Freetown during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Freetown City Council has partnered with Greenstand, a technology firm based out of the US and Tanzania, to digitally track Freetown's new trees. So our 1 million trees, for the 1 million trees, we will build and are building a digital footprint based on satellite mapping and your regular geospatial mapping that allows for the tracking of individual trees. The tree tracker app that was created by Greenstand and customized for the Freetown City Council is used by community-based organizations, of which we have 10 that are currently operational, has already captured 250,000 trees that have been planted and are growing to date. And each of these trees are tracked on a monthly basis. The growers care for the trees and take periodic geotagged photos of them as they grow, which gives us a real-time understanding of the health and the survival of the tree. We have an 80% tree survival metric target that we have set against the 1 million trees.
So the Freetown Tree Planting Program is participating in a World Bank funded pilot project looking to develop a repeatable workflow for monitoring urban tree canopy. And this program would help us to track and quantify greening efforts. And Dar es Salaam is the other location that's also participating in this. So as part of this program, we're using satellite imagery, and we're working, in this case, with student mappers to extract what we call training data that would identify existing examples of canopy cover. And this training data then is used to train a machine learning algorithm to detect canopy. And our mappers, they used Xavia's groundwork platform. So that's a tool, an online tool. They didn't have to download anything, but this tool allowed them to digitize or capture and then label representative samples of existing canopy cover that we would then use to train and generate the algorithm.
Under the Russell project, there is an ability now for the city to manage its natural resources and mitigate critical recurring hazards through scaling up spatial planning capacity with a robust data-driven approach.
Climate change, complex crisis risks, migration, natural disasters, they all call for new risk information that is timely, global, and more reliable. This is essential to scaling up and increasing the impact of risk financing applications worldwide. Since 2019, the joint partnership between the Finance Global Partner Practice at the World Bank and the European Space Agency leverages satellite data to support ex-ante and forecast-based financing to a wide range of risks, including drought, flood, food insecurity, earthquakes, pandemics, and other complex crises. Ultimately, providing support to governments and decision makers to develop parametric insurance, cat bonds, or quick response budget lines to protect populations, livelihoods, and economies from the impact of crises and disasters. A quick overview of our partnership with ESA, highlighting the demand and some of the proposed solutions that leverage satellite data either at sort of capacity building level or through the development of practical demand-driven solutions on risk financing. Highlight number one is the Next Generation Drought Index platform, the NGDI. We know that information such as the actual impact on livelihoods materializes in the case of a drought very long after the event has started to develop, sometimes 9 to 12 months afterwards. We also know that satellite-based drought indicators are very early proxies that characterize the ultimate impact of a drought and are available very early, sometimes months before the actual harvest. So there's a clear gap to be filled there in terms of providing clients and decision makers with access to that information so that financial response to food insecurity and affected populations can be addressed very early on in the process. And this is where our World Bank ESA partnership is critical in providing access to free, open, global data, including of the Copernicus constellation, for better protected populations with quick financing solutions where needed and when most needed. Another couple of slides highlighting also the potential to operationalize the exposure mapping from satellite data, helping identify what crops are being grown where, and therefore how to better target our financial response efforts. And finally, some features of the NGDI platform, including on the co-design process and convergence of evidence approach. Highlight number two is the use of medium to high resolution satellite data to better respond to climate risks faced by the financial sector. One of the key applications here is on the environmental change and climate risk monitoring to better anticipate, address physical risk from climate change, transition risk, as well as liability risks and opportunities faced by companies, regulators, and investors globally. Out of the 50 essential climate variables released by the Global Climate Observing System, along with WMO, almost 2/3 can only be observed from space, making satellite data a very critical component of climate monitoring for sort of greening the financial systems and greening investments worldwide. Another example of high-resolution data for exposure mapping through identification of the built environment. And finally, highlight 3 on the putting to use all of these different features in the case of MENA and in particular Morocco. Here through the example of exposure mapping, including public infrastructure, residential, commercial, industrial buildings, not only for risk financing, but more broadly speaking for risk management applications, including post-event flood extent mapping through high-resolution satellite data. In conclusion, the current COVID crisis shows how critical it is to act early and to support decision-making with the right information at the right time. Following recent developments of satellite technology in the past decade, satellite data and big data now allow to collect and process unprecedented streams of observations so that complex and emerging risks can now be addressed through new kinds of policy and risk financing instruments. Thank you very much for your attention.
I'm from Bargny, a coastal town in Senegal where our homes, our assets, and often our pride are slowly being swallowed by the sea. Imagine life in Bargny. Fisheries are dwindling, buildings are sinking, plastic is polluting the ocean, and productive lands are invaded by sea salt. But this is not unique to Bargny. Along West Africa's coast, communities are facing heightened risk from coastal erosion, flooding, and pollution. Some areas lose over 20 meters of shoreline every single year. Coastal ecosystems are degrading, and livelihoods depending on them are lost or at risk. I think that it's fantastic that the World Bank put together the WACA program to develop and bring new, innovative solutions for resilient coastal livelihoods and communities.
The sheer scale and complexity of these challenges requires a concerted, comprehensive, and sustained effort across the entire region. These challenges can be prevented, but require moving beyond traditional approaches that focus largely on infrastructure solutions and require adopting a holistic approach to resilience. That's why, alongside engineering solutions, WACA places a special focus on nature-based and people-centered approaches. So through interventions such as dikes, riverbank vegetation, mangrove rehabilitation, and dune restoration, WACA aims to protect people and their livelihoods from these risks, while also creating new opportunities for affected communities, engaging them for the sustainable management of coastal resources.
ngay janoon foofooy sama néeg vague yi bu ñu jógee dañuy dugg ba sama biir néeg bu fekkee géej gi dafa nas xànk vague yi di dóor man du ma mën a toog sama biir néeg c'est parce que sama biir néeg day tooy su ma tëjee bunt bi ça rentre dans ma maison, dans ma chambre.
And we knew that the challenges had to be addressed at scale and that the World Bank couldn't go it alone. So WACA was purposefully designed so that World Bank IDA financing at country and regional levels would bring multiple partners on board to mobilize technical expertise and financing, and collectively create a movement that shines light on coastal issues and provides solutions that will benefit coastal communities for a long time to come.
Data used to be fragmented with every country or organization doing their own thing. Now, with the West Africa Coastal Observatory, we have virtual space to synthesize and validate data, as we did for the 2020 Regional State of the Coast Report. WACA has mobilized regional and international institutions, the Climate Technology Center and Network, European Space Agency, French CEREMA, and NASA, to name a few, to develop and compile long-range data. Through technology, we have set the stage for the next generation of applications, with Earth observation, combining it with multiple data sets for improved coastal risk modeling. With these digital tools, countries now have rigorous and accurate information for decision-making.
The West Africa Coastal Areas Program WACA is transformative as it builds on existing institutions, regional networks, and international innovation. With the many partners, countries are set to responding to socioeconomic shocks, protecting ecosystem services, and managing coastal erosion, flooding, and pollution. In Benin, in one of our first set of 22 sites, we rehabilitated mangroves and secured the riverbank. As a result, 36,000 people are now less exposed to coastal erosion and flooding. West African countries have what it takes for a green, resilient, and inclusive development. We thank the many partners that have made this possible. Let's scale up our support. Go to www.wacaprogram.org, and thank you very much for your attention today.
The Geo-Enabling Initiative for Monitoring and Supervision, or GEMS, was launched by the World Bank's Fragile Conflict and Violence, the FCV group, to create global public good by building client capacity in digital data collection and analysis and systematically enhance project monitoring and real-time risk management in FCV settings. The main idea behind GEMS is to get eyes on the ground where we can't always have boots on the ground. Let's take the example of a small town called Mafa in the northeastern Nigeria. This is a conflict-ridden region, hardly accessible to bank staff because of security. But there are bank-funded activities implemented in this town. A picture and the exact location of the activity were taken using a smartphone. The GEMS initiative has developed a methodology to systematically collect rich project data from the field using a simple smartphone. The principle behind GEMS is to bring a special dimension to project data. We call the rocket science the data coming from remotely sensed technologies like satellite and drone imageries. The GEMS team has worked closely with the European Space Agency to channel these works through the Fragility, Conflict and Security EO4SD cluster and with the Geospatial Operations Support team. Then there is what we call the pocket science, or data collected in real time from the field using smartphones. GEMS is about that pocket science. The two technologies are complementary, and combined, you get actionable data that we like to call the socket science. The GEMS team is currently working with the project P360 within the bank to build a centralized platform that combines multiple layers of geospatial data from various sources. The GEMS methodology uses a free open source user-friendly mobile data collection tool called Kobo Toolbox, which is donor funded. It has been developed by the Harvard Humanitarian Initiative. It's a kind of simple tool that is very appropriate for challenging settings and allows to collect data online and offline. Using this tool, project implementing agencies are able to collect data in real time from the field at the most granular level. On this map of the Democratic Republic of Congo, each point on the map represents a site where a bank-funded project has intervened. Each point gives information about the sub-project, including its GPS location, the description of the activity at the site, and even a photo that gives an idea of what has been done at the exact location. With the current pandemic situation, this is a very effective way to continue supervising and monitoring projects remotely. To date, more than 130,000 locations of bank-funded sub-project sites have been mapped in 18 countries, and these are data and information that can be leveraged to strengthen countries' resiliency. But what GEMS is really about is capacity building initiative. The entry point is a 3-day workshop training where we teach participants everything they need to know to be able to run the digital monitoring platform independently by themselves. We build local capacity, which contributes to improving digital skills locally and to enabling monitoring and supervision standards owned locally and mainstreamed through bank-funded projects. We are also about to collaborate with the Global Evaluation Initiative to further create public good of local MME skills in countries. Since the COVID mission constraint, we have adapted all of our training online, and the past year alone, we have trained more than 1,800 people online from 70 countries. I'd like to conclude with this message from clients in Uganda.
For real-time data and better M&E,
build client capacity with simple ICT.
Thank you very much.
Today, I'm going to talk to you about our work on improving crop area and yield measurement in smallholder farming systems by integrating surveys and satellites. Since improving agricultural productivity is an effective strategy to reduce poverty and food insecurity, it doubling productivity and incomes of smallholders is one of the targets within the Sustainable Development Goal of ending hunger. One metric for agricultural productivity is crop yield, which requires accurate measurements of crop production and cultivated area. The problem is that the crop yield estimates in low and middle income countries are often unavailable or unreliable, particularly where productivity improvements are needed the most. Which brings us to the 50 by 30 initiative, an ambitious partnership between countries, several bilateral donors, and multilateral organizations, including the FAO, the World Bank, and IFAD. The initiative aims to support 50 low and lower middle income countries between now and 2030 to improve the availability, quality, and use of agricultural survey data produced by their statistical systems. In parallel with these developments on the ground, there has been a dramatic increase in the availability of high-resolution satellite imagery. On the right are the European Space Agency's Sentinel-2 twin satellites, which are providing 10-meter resolution imagery for the entire Earth every 5 days and for free. As a result, we are observing agricultural plots across the developing world with clarity that we could not have fathomed just a few years ago. So our vision is a system that combines satellite data with georeference objectively measured survey data from the ground. The ground data can in turn train machine learning models that can identify plots, classify crops, and estimate crop area and yields for entire landscapes beyond the locations in which the surveys are conducted. Over the period of 2015 to 2020, we have successfully operationalized these ideas at subnational scales in Uganda and Mali. Here are some plot-level maize yields comparisons from Uganda. In panel A, we compare full plot crop cuts on the ground to satellite-based yields that are calibrated to those measures, while in panel B, we again compare full plot crop cuts to this time uncalibrated satellite yields, which are solely based on satellite imagery and crop models. Both calibrated and uncalibrated satellite yields do well in terms of capturing yield variability on the ground. But uncalibrated satellite yields are systematically overestimated. See the distribution shifted to the right in panel B. This emphasizes the importance of using ground data for calibration purposes. Now, new research under the 50 by 30 initiative is zeroing in on the recommended practices that would maximize the utility of recurrent household surveys for satellite-based estimation of agricultural outcomes. Using Sentinel-2 imagery and georeference plot locations collected in national household surveys from Malawi and Ethiopia, we have mapped areas cultivated with maize at 10-meter resolution across these two countries for 4 agricultural seasons from 2016 and 2019. In doing so, we demonstrated that a machine learning model trained with our survey data can classify smallholder plots cultivated with maize with up to 75% accuracy. We also show that small erosion in predictive accuracy of our models under less preferable approaches to georeferencing plot locations in household surveys can in fact result in large overestimation of total area cultivated with maize. So our message is again using the right training data collected with the right survey models for Earth observation applications. So what are we doing right now to operationalize integrated survey satellite applications in service of our client countries? First, we're working with several like-minded partners with whom we already started pushing the frontier. Second, we're continuing our research on survey methods in remote sensing, and will ultimately be distilling this research into guidelines for designing and implementing large-scale surveys that can provide the required training data for downstream Earth observation applications on high-resolution crop type mapping and crop yield estimation. And with those guidelines in hand, we'll be working with the national statistical offices to refit their survey operations to collect the right ground data. And finally, we'll continue to work with client countries to make sure that the resulting data and research are used for policy design and monitoring purposes. This is of course easier said than done, but with data and integration, ending poverty and hunger is within reach. Thank you very much.
Urbanization happened, and monitoring it at the planetary scale is extremely important to support a number of key applications as risk assessment or socioeconomic development, just to cite a couple. To give you an idea of the dimension of the phenomenon, let's consider that in the next 30 years, 2.5 billion additional people are expected to be living in cities, the vast majority in Africa and Asia. In this framework, at DLR, we have launched a suite of products, namely the World Settlement Footprint, WSF, composed of open and free high-resolution global layers aimed at supporting a comprehensive analysis of urbanization. In particular, the suite has been developed with the support of ESA, the World Bank, and Google, and has the objective to help understanding the phenomenon and in turn to take decisions before it happens for supporting sustainable development. The suite includes the WSF 215, outlining the 2015 global settlement extent, and the novel WSF 2019, which exhibits even higher quality and detail. To study past trends, we generated the WSF evolution, which outlines the growth of the settlement extent from 1985 to 2015 on a yearly basis. Furthermore, on top of that, we are now completing a novel layer which also estimates the percent impervious surface. This is particularly useful to identify areas experiencing a considerable loss of green spaces, for instance. Last but not least, the series includes the WSF 3D, which estimates globally the height and volume of buildings, and the WSF population, where the number of people per pixel is estimated by redistributing sensor figures available at the finest administrative level. Through a closed feedback loop, the WSF suite has become of great importance for a number of World Bank activities. However, this collaboration is now moving to the next level. Indeed, the bank has started to actively support the improvement and quality assurance of the WSF layers through the collection of local information, which is of fundamental importance. In particular, this has been made possible through micro-working campaigns.
We digitized the whole Zanzibar island, and we have a building footprint of around 500,000 buildings.
First, I'm pleased to be part of micro because I was no idea in GIS, but after that, it reshaped my career. I want to be a GIS expert.
Pilots have yet taken place in Kenya, Mali, and Tanzania, mobilizing hundreds of students. This allowed us to gather tens of thousands of reference labels through relatively simple tasks to be performed on specific mobile applications. Here, webinars have been organized that allow not only to train the students, but also to raise awareness and understanding of the background technology. These activities are setting a new paradigm where the development of a new technology shall be performed by co-creation with both World Bank teams and end user through a participatory experience. This will make it possible to create novel tools directly building on users' experience that are actually responding to their needs.
What is amazing with this new technology is that it allows to see cities as three-dimensional, and this changes the way we look at density. Looking at heights and floor area for over 400 cities across the world, we can see that people in richer cities have more space, making it easier to comply with self-isolation and social distancing. It is economic geography and not physical geography which drives difference in contagion risk. What makes a difference in neighborhood income is investment in housing structure, infrastructure, and amenities, which transform places from being crowded to being dense and livable, and hence decrease contagion risk. A methodology was rapidly deployed to bring this at scale and in a timely manner, and identify hotspots based on the inability to social distance and the proximity to key services where people may cluster, even in a lockdown. In Kinshasa, one of the world's fastest growing cities, the predicted hotspots have been used to develop a vulnerability index and targeting cash transfer to the most vulnerable and most populated neighborhood in the city. Hotspots for more than 55 cities are now available on a platform for teams to be able to further do these overlays and inform project intervention. The data was also used in urbanization reviews, a World Bank product offering a framework for city leaders to make tough decisions on development in their cities and providing diagnostic tools to identify policy distortion and analyze investment priorities. In Somalia, for example, it helped convey the message that cities are growing very fast and in a fragmented way, making it more expensive to deliver services and create jobs. We are really looking forward to continuing bring this technology as we support clients to adopt a sustainable, inclusive, and resilient urban development, and as they recover from COVID, thanks to the information available through the collaboration with DLR, ESA, and other partners. Thank you very much for your attention.
This is a new model for skills and capacity building that we've implemented here in Dar es Salaam, really to confront the challenge of unplanned and rapid urbanization happening across sub-Saharan Africa, and in particular Dar es Salaam, which is 80% unsurveyed. The 6 million inhabitants is growing at over 1,000 new entrants per day, and traditional methods for surveying mapping and managing the city really can't keep up with the growth the city is experiencing in peri-urban areas, where some neighborhoods are doubling every 4 years. So we've been looking for a new approach that allows us to go digital and to scale quickly and affordably, based primarily on using local people and local devices. So it's about reductions in cost and complexity and training new opportunities and new tools to the next generation. We see these tools being in the new suite of Earth observing technologies, the latest satellite monitoring datasets and associated classifiers and AI services, combined with low-cost drones or mobile phone data and household surveys. So this is something we've built into the curricula of 4 universities here in Tanzania, working in partnership with other European universities in Turku, Delft, Dortmund, and Twente, and training students every year from geography, disaster risk management, spatial and urban planning on Earth observation for climate resilience and data services. But not just the training, really the key here is also the practicals. Mass internships under the Placement and Industry program to co-create services for the city that we know are necessary. Some examples really have been to calibrate and enhance the flood forecast and flood risk models of the city, where there's very little historical data on hydrology, but also flood impacts. So here we have a satellite-derived inundation model, but it's calibrated by local youth coming and tagging 30,000 households who have been affected by flooding in the recent decades, and getting their oral flood histories onto the map in a geocoded way. To do this, we've also digitized off the satellite over 1 million buildings across the city to update that building footprint to reflect the reality on the ground. In this way, we are combining in situ knowledge collected by mobile data through students with the expert model created through traditional hydrological tools. But this can help us go further in the event of flood damage assessment, where we respond quickly to an event. We can mobilize these communities to have the flood impacts collected from the households and placed on the map. We've also been able to apply this to longer-term flood drainage. So the storm drainage master plan of the city relies on drain conditions, which are very hard to assess in a city that's changing so quickly, where you have hundreds of kilometers of drains that are really not digital. So sending students on a mass industrial placement to assess the condition of the drain. Are they buried? Have the culvert closed off the drain? Is there vegetation? Is there sedimentation? Is there solid waste blocking this drain? Has the concrete collapsed or not? Is really critical, and this needs to be updated on a regular basis. So it's a challenge where hundreds of students with very simple rulers and maybe geocoded open data collection kit apps can tag the image and update that infrastructure to support the storm drainage master plan. A similar application has been the erosion model of the city, where we've seen that a lot of the western expansion has led to increased sedimentation rates in the river, contributing to the flooding. But we don't have a good erosion model. Now, these can be derived from satellite sources, but it really needs to be calibrated with accurate, high-resolution surface soil information. So the students went out and collected over 650 samples, geotagged them using their mobile phone, identified labels, dried, sieved, and weighed those samples and entered that into the database to support the erosion risk monitoring index. And so they've been able to co-create this sediment model and erosion model that we've been developing for the city. The final piece here, also on erosion control, has been the tree cover. There's a natural asset provided by the urban trees in terms of soil retention and rainwater runoff reduction from slowing down that rainfall. So mapping the existing canopy of trees in the city and what those trees are, actually getting to the tree trunks and identifying them, has been really critical to help manage, maintain and model the effect of these trees in the mid-basin and upper basin, and help us plan for an upper basin restoration program in the future. So in this way, the Resilience Academy is teaching both the new technology skills, but also the real-world problems and how to overcome them by working together in applied research, in mass internship, and also in direct services for local city government. So throughout the process, the students gain valuable skills and insights, as well as relationships with the city. But most of all, they really get empowered by learning to develop professional services with their own tools in their pocket and what's freely available on the web. But let's hear it from them.
Most of the area which have been affected by the flood have not been mapped.
This data you give to us will be helpful, especially for the production of maps.
We are able to identify the challenges which face the communities.
I use this GPS receiver so as to getting information about tourism activities, and also will help even the community to understand their area and how they can get services and where.
My interest is data science,
I love data, I love information.
Now they get to apply what they learn in actually real life. And it's a very good feeling when you see that you have made an impact to the society.